All right, welcome everybody. Today is April 17th, 2024. It is 9:30 a.m. on the East Coast of the United States, and you are tuned into Business on the Block, episode 76, Data Wars. Who really owns your online content? There's a battle brewing over who actually owns your social posts, and all that data means that there's big money at stake. So should you be getting a piece of it? We'll also tell you why Galaxy Digital and Reddit are worried about AI content and why they think blockchain may save the day. And finally, Substack is flipping the script on the entire podcasting business model. You're about to find out what's happening this week in tech, content, and business. Business on the Block. I'm joined as always by my lovely co-host, Michelle Peterson-Clark.
Hi, everyone.
And Mike Neubauer.
Hello, hello.
Michelle is in London. Mike is in Miami. All right. So I'm going to jump right into story number one. This is coming to us courtesy of you today. AI colliding with blockchain. Galaxy Digital CEO Mike Novogratz recently supported a post on X by Reddit co-founder Alexis Ohanian. Ohanian stated that the spread of AI-generated images online requires a blockchain solution. He explained that blockchain can confirm the authenticity of any image using an immutable ledger that would be globally signed off on. So basically, any content that you want to upload first goes into this ledger and then is authenticated. Thoughts on this one? Mike, we'll start with you. What do you think about this idea? Crazy, or is this the future?
Well, we've repeatedly said many times that blockchain is a solution for for proving that something is real. I can't even say the word.
Easy for you to say.
Authenticity.
Yeah, there you go.
Authenticating.
The problem is that how many people are actually going to go that extra step to authenticate whether something is real or not? The chances of that happening are very, very slim. Now, I'm going to tell a very disturbing story about something that happened here in Florida, not in Miami, but in Florida, which is a huge state, by the way. A guy was at a playground taking pictures of kids and turning them into AI porn and selling that as child pornography on the internet. Now, how do you track this guy down using this toothpaste that is already out of the tube? This is a solution that can help regulate some of those initiatives. And from a law enforcement perspective, somebody who's trying to get this demonic creature off the streets, it would be a useful tool in order to allow people to track that individual down based on blockchain being that authenticating piece. See, I got it. That allows them to properly go after them. However, the average individual that's looking for the ability to validate whether, Donald Trump shook Ronald McDonald's hand on Wednesday at 9:00, they're not going to go in blockchain and sift through this metadata that they know nothing about in order to, prove that that's real or fake. So that's really where the underlying issue comes in with this. Is it a solution? Yeah. And I think that for liability purposes, companies are going to start moving in that direction. Especially if they're producing AI content in the form of content creation, social media posts, even, general marketing content.
Michelle, do you think Novogratz and Ohanian are crazy, or is this something that we should be paying attention to?
I think that the premise behind it is good. And we, as Mike has said, we have talked about this a lot. And in fact, I think last week we talked about this on the show. When trying to be able to validate images or videos or things that you may have written, etc. So I think we're all in agreement, aren't we, that that's the way it's going to go, and that is going to ultimately be, how long it will take to get there's a different story, but ultimately it will be that unless it is authenticated on the blockchain like that, then people are able to question its authority or its validation. However, I'd like to talk. Sorry, do you want to make a point?
No, please.
I'll
have comments in a second. Keep going.
I said, however, I would like to talk about this article. I doubt very much that Alex Dovbenya is a real person. I actually think AI wrote this article it's got Sports Illustrated vibes about it. So for those people who were not listening to the show when we first talked about Sports Illustrated, there was a whole kerfuffle about the fact that they had created journalists who weren't real people, pretending they were real people. They created personas for them. You know, they like jogging and drinking lattes and all of this stuff. And in actual fact, they turned out not to be real. The article is poorly worded, poorly written. It just smacks of not being someone who, it's not even about if the person's native language isn't English, you know, if English is their second language. It's not even about that. It's just about the fact that it just reads so terrible. Like, I could go on and on, but one sentence in particular makes me think. It's the second to last sentence at the bottom, if you've got the article if you're looking at the article. For instance, according to Giant Ernst & Young, for instance, launched a Bloc-powered service for detecting fake sake back in 2020. Now, that is a word salad. What does that say? What is that saying?
If you spell it backwards, it spells ChatGPT.
Yeah.
When I dropped this so for those who don't know, we have a Discord we maintain between the three of us, and we share ideas on thoughts for the upcoming show. I dropped this one in there, and Michelle, you hit it immediately. This is your marketing background, and you didn't use these words, but it basically was, you flagged it for nonsensical word choices and just awkward phraseology. And the minute you see that, you're like, okay, no real author would put that out on the internet unless they didn't know the language. But to your point, it's not that.
Well, you can't unsee it once you do see it, right? And, you know, we talk about authenticating specific image content. Why can't articles like this be authenticated as well?
They can be.
Utilizing the same concept. So in a way, this is sort of creating an idea to eliminate issues like this. But I really feel that this is really what separates some of the things that we're doing here versus what you see out there as far as trend-setting initiatives. You know, we are dabbling in this technology so much that we're starting to pierce through the foggy veil of, hey, this is awesome, and really starting to recognize like the patterns that a computer program tends to have. And that's what this is, right? AI is a computer program. And when it tries to replicate years, evolution, generations of human speech and communication efforts, literally in the past 2 years alone, in its massive tsunami wave push into this culture, you're going to start recognizing nuances like this. Now, how many people actually got to the second to last sentence of this article? I would probably argue very little. But it doesn't negate the fact that this is exactly what, you know, got Sports Illustrated caught with their pants down. And it ultimately led to the entire organization's demise. So I don't know where this ends up, but I really feel that everything that's being promoted in this type of article is something that we should be able to implement and demand for any articles that are written like this. And again, I am also under the impression that AI generated content is good as long as you own it. If you sit there and say, this is Alex and it's not Alex, that's the problem.
So I want to touch on this, Mike, to the point of the story here and our lead, if you will, of who owns your actual social posts. This whole concept is interesting to me around the concept of stolen content. I was in several back and forths yesterday on LinkedIn at length with some high-level folks who were really upset that their content had been stolen. What's happening right now, for those who don't know, on social media, there are AI tools, both audio, video, and written, that will isolate the best performing social post from whomever the artist is or whatever person, creator, or you know, personality. It will then duplicate it almost exactly and will reslap your logo and colors all over it and post it automatically under your name. So I can then go rip off Michelle or Mike en masse automated. Just press the button and suddenly I have all of Gary Vee's stuff repurposed as Invictus or whomever. So this is becoming a big enough of an issue that it's going to now be, people want to spend money against it because your assets online, your IP is what that is digital money, it basically in representative form of content. And my point is people want to protect that. They just don't know how. And blockchain provides that that response. And the debate I was in yesterday was with a blockchain builder, product guy, who said it's not really worth the money. It's going to cost a lot to put this stuff on chain. And I said, you don't think that someone like Gary Vaynerchuk or Tony Robbins or Joel Osteen is going to want to protect their online content? I think that we're at the point where there's going to be enough big moneyed interests that are losing that this becomes, blockchain is the only solution that can do this. It becomes worthwhile to look into it.
Well, I got a dirty little secret to inform you. All those little, check our terms and condition boxes that they post with that content, they don't own it anyway.
Who's they?
Yeah.
Gary, whoever the hell you're talking about, like, they don't own it when they post it to those platforms. And that's the real invasion of privacy that people just don't understand. Somehow we are held liable for content that we don't own because we generate that content. But all content that's posted on these platforms are not owned. And this is where social media blockchain solutions come into the conversation. Right. And we've had conversations like this before in many different occasions. We discussed Minds. We discussed all these various social platforms that have, started to trigger that concept of owning data and who is responsible and who can basically defend that data. But the minute they put it out there, that is ultimately like a free game. It's an open journal and diary that they are providing to the world. That is the invasion of privacy that these big tech companies have been getting away with.
So interesting, Mike. For those who aren't following, in the States right now, there's the allegations that Bank of America has debanked certain people for what they posted on social. Meaning if you were arch conservative, you had your stuff taken, your banking taken away. This is just brand new in the news and it's being argued. The point is, to your point, Mike, if you post on social and you're held responsible for what you post, yet you can't actually profit because let's not forget, these companies, these platforms are getting scraped and being paid for that to train AI on your content. And that is the crux of the matter. Blockchain is the only way around this. There's no other way that you can verify that that content originated, that it was yours, that you were the one. This is called provenance. What is the history of ownership of that thing? And just because it's digital is no different than if it's a piece of real estate in the physical world.
Well, it's history repeating itself. Because we've already done this. Instead of calling it AI, we called it algorithms, right? So all this data that we thought we were just posting so our friends can see, pictures of our kid walking for the first time, or posting that they hate the move that the Yankees made last night in their pitching change, all of that is just consolidated, segmented, repurposed, and sold, and you don't own any of it. And a lot of people just failed to realize that whole component of it. So you have no rights to that information. You have no rights to that data. It is you're basically utilizing that platform. Now, where I think the gray area comes in and where the rubber meets the road with respect to blockchain, again, we don't have that app that makes people waffles like Facebook would do, where you can just go in, see a notification, give a thumbs up, and get back to, driving your car or walking down the sidewalk, whatever the hell you were doing.
Right. Well, I want to tie this into the next story because I feel like this is really part of our broader...
Can I make one more before we go? I think people need to start to really, this is probably, people should have been doing this before now, but with the proliferation of AI stuff now, we need to question what we read or what we see in pictures more than ever before. And so, it's a bit of a cautionary tale of being very careful about what you share or what you believe or what you don't believe. But, when you see things like this article and when you're reading it, like there's one sentence that says, not a single digital picture cannot be trusted due to the proliferation of AI. Now, so that's a double negative. There's a not and a cannot. So does that mean you can trust the pictures or you can't trust the pictures? But terrible when you writing. Read that, I was like,
I should say terrible.
I had steam coming out of my ears by the time I got to this sentence, let alone what was at the bottom that we showed you before. So straight away, I'm like, come on.
Trust the pictures that we post, not what you see somewhere else. That's going to be this message.
It's not terrible writing. Yeah. It's terrible prompting.
Yeah.
All right. I'm taking us to story number...
a word salad.
Story number 2. This story is users can rent out their Reddit data to train AI. Users, that is. So AI makers are licensing books, videos, and more in pursuit of training data for the LLMs. We all know this. But there's a new startup called Vanna, which has a platform, and this lets individuals pool their data into a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. Members of the DAO can then vote on licensing the combined data to the AI companies for a shared profit, which is the interesting part. However, this is the Reddit is opposing this. They're accusing Vanna of exploiting their data export system, so the API, which means this takes us into we are into conspiracy corner, my friends, because I think there's something afoot here and we want to call attention to it. The platforms will make money from the renting of this data out to these AI companies. You won't. When there finally is a way to do that right now, they're being opposed by the platforms. By the way, Ohanian is involved in this. Thoughts on this one? Let's start with you, Michelle. What do you think about the concept of users renting out their data as well as Reddit opposing it?
Good luck. That's what I say.
To which
Good luck.
side?
Good luck to Vanna and the people in the DAO. And I mean, there's a. I
So you think the platform's going to win this?
Sorry?
You think the platform has the upper hand?
Oh God, absolutely. They've already shut down one of the subreddits anyway. So, like, of course they do. You know, the guy who created Wall Street Bets thought he owned the data. They took him to court and he lost.
I remember that.
So, you know, how is this any different? I mean, there's a couple of things in this. They've currently got 141,000 people in the DAO. Only 21,000 people have actually uploaded all of their data. That's 15%. So, in theory, the excellent uptake of this, only 15% of the people have actually gone to the next step other than joining. And probably some of those would be bots and some of those would be people just to, you know, see what happens. I just can't see in the current format that we have where when you're on rented land, and we've talked about this before too, that you can win this game. I do not think that is possible. Good luck to them. They've raised, what is it, you know, $20 million. Good luck to them. But I watch this space is all I can say. I don't think it's going to go well.
I think your observation about Wall Street Bets and the illustrative example there, that is fascinating. Mike, what do you think about this? The users renting out their Reddit data to train the AI while Reddit says no go.
I mean, I agree with everything that Michelle had said. You know, I'll put it a little bit more bluntly. Reddit is showing a little bit too much leg up their skirt by basically confirming that their data is their entire business model. And this is, if you replace Reddit with Facebook or Meta or Twitter or any of them, it's the exact same model. Google, Amazon, everything is predicated around your activity that they can monitor and therefore repurpose. If you can now take that data and repurpose it for your own benefit, and more importantly, train AI models to do that for you, it makes their entire platform irrelevant. And then there's a way to circumvent their platforms in a way that you can monitor people's activity and data sets to retarget them on external platforms that you will not be paying for in their pay-to-play models. You know, a lot of that was jumbled way of just saying this translates everything to what we talked about in the first story, right? We need a way to be able to authenticate and monitor specific elements here. And if social media is an essential piece of today's technology and today's marketing for business, if it's a critical piece of the infrastructure, we need to figure out ways so that the users who can engage with it are actually comfortable with the fact that the information they're providing is being put for their benefit and potentially the benefit to help grow the platform, not necessarily to only profit it. So I don't know what that answer is other than, you know, again, the conclusion I've come to when it comes to any of these monster companies is that if the entire global population stops using them for a period of 7 days, they are bankrupt. They do not exist anymore. They are fueled by the input of our own user data.
That's the case for all these platforms. I agree. Go ahead, Michelle.
The irony is that we'd have to use social media to get everybody to stop using social media because there's no other way to reach people.
Well, think about everything we just talked about. I'm sorry, I just want to make one more point.
Please.
The thing about everything we just talked about in the previous article with authenticating content, how much issue is taken up right now. We have geopolitical issues, we have cultural issues with things that are posted or commented or liked on these social platforms that are not authenticated. Right? You have companies making multi-million-dollar business and marketing decisions off of a comment of a post from a user who has one follower, right? Because it's a bot farm. It's an AI generated content farm that's creating this content for the purposes of restructuring and reconfiguring the way that some of these businesses conduct their marketing activities. And, we're in the conspiracy corner, so I'm just going to go down that road. But I really feel that, all of these things come around full circle with our previous discussion about authenticating certain data. And whether that happens on the front end or the back end, some of these platforms need to start taking into consideration that that's going to be a viable way for users to believe and engage safely with the content that's being pumped out there.
So I'm going to lean into the conspiracy corner thing a bit. I think that this is an organized thing, that these platforms all know that the data that comes into them is their business model. They will fight tooth and nail to protect it because that's their money. And with the AI LLM scraping, there's huge money being spent there. This is a new revenue stream for these companies, these platforms, the social platforms. Now, from my background in finance, my old career, I can tell you this is how business works. You have to get through the lawsuits first. All these people who feel that that's their data and they should get that, when that money goes right by them and they don't get a piece of it, the lawsuits will start. It'll end up becoming a political event. It'll end up becoming a law. This whole process will take years. But where this goes is ultimately decentralized social. So for those who aren't familiar with DeSo, it is a platform. The concept, they're already out there. There's crappy ones initially, but ultimately the platform is owned by the people. And its decision making is basically run as a DAO. That is pie in the sky. We're not going to get there for a long time. But the reality is, when people realize that they're being taken advantage of, they will push back. It'll take some time, but this is no different from the privacy revelations when you realize that your iPhone was stealing everything about, or the TikTok. Like initially, people are shocked. Then it takes a while to digest, and then there's action on it. So I think this is the beginning. This won't end. You're right. Reddit will win this. Wall Street Bets was the example. Like you don't own your data, period. However, people want to.
I think too that we need to think about Vanna have got $20 million from their whatever they're running a business. Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, like they have very deep pockets. And they can run these people into the ground. Not just them, but anybody except each other.
But that's Mike's point about everyone not using it together. Like when it's not that there's a company has to fight a company. It's when your provider data pushes back. And you know where I think this goes? Go ahead.
No, go on.
Well, I think this takes us to everyone's most controversial tweeter.
Well, it's amazing how the rules of the game have changed for one individual. Right. And all of a sudden, free speech is becoming censored, and you have the ability to attack people based around things that they posted 20 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a big problem.
Yeah. I think that the next terms and conditions update for Reddit needs to be read very carefully, because my guess is there'll be a line at, number 66.1.2.6.8 that says you can't harvest your data yourself and use it for some, for profit or gain. But, or something, we own it.
For everybody that's using it religiously, are they going to read that and be like, delete this app? I'm not interested anymore. No, they're just going to accept it and move on.
Yeah, that's my point. My point is that they'll slip it in so far down the thing, no one's ever going to read it. But then they've got an avenue to sue you later for when you try to do what this company is wanting to do.
Worse, they'll only put it in the Swahili language version of the terms and conditions.
I'm going to put this out there right now. The stars are aligning, no pun intended, for Elon Musk. This is going to lead the road to X as a platform. They already have no advertisers, or they've lost half of their advertisers. Elon is clearly a guy that leans into the whole concept of Web3. He understands the blockchain DeSo thing. And what does he got to lose? And it's a free speech argument, Mike, to your point. So I really feel like X will eventually roll out some way for users to monetize their own data and have control and permissioning, which will then force the evolution of the social media game. That won't be for years, but I think that the stars are aligned, as I say, because Elon is the guy. He's got the tools and he's got the interest in doing that. I would keep an eye on that.
Well, I agree with you 100%. And anybody who's watched this show knows I'm in Elon's corner. I love everything he does as a business individual and obviously as a free speech advocate. But how long can he do this without any sort of generated revenue model that he can rely on in order to keep that system afloat?
I don't think this is about revenue and ad gens anymore. I think that when you're getting into the free speech censorship, this is like when the Americans were having Brits quartered in their homes. No offense, Michelle, sorry. But like you get to the point where there's enough of a pushback that the people are like, I will fund Elon to keep this thing so I can post my own opinions without censorship.
And again, we get into the same roundabout argument where Bank of America can come in and demonetize and debank those individuals who support that.
Well, that's going to be decided right now. It's good that those accusations are happening as we speak. I agree, but it's all moving in the direction of power to the people. Folks aren't getting paid for their own content, and they know it. And by the way, we're thinking in terms of Michelle, Marc, and Mike, as important as we like to think we are. But when you get to the level of, like I said, Tony Robbins, like these people are going to take action and protect their content. Those are digital assets, no different from any other asset in the real world.
But I also feel that the content that is created by them getting persecuted is additional content that they can use, right? So
unless it's getting taken down,
they'll find another platform to do it on. And that's the power that the internet does provide, right? So they might not have the biggest voices, but some of those voices will potentially get, shared. So take the New York Post issue that happened during the last election. Not only did they get their account banned on Twitter, but anybody who tried to repost that particular post on that platform also had repercussions, right? These are the things that, again, you're showing too much leg. People are not willing to stand up for that anymore. And it's really amazing to watch the system play out in real time. Now, I'll quote somebody, I won't say who, but like the beach ball of freedom held underwater can only be held under for so long. Before you know it, it has to surface. And free speech is a huge component of that beach ball.
Mike, they may take our lands, but they'll never take our freedom.
Well, I don't want them to take our lands either.
Michelle, comments?
Well, my comments is, as an outsider to the US looking in, you guys are regulated up the wazoo and you don't realize it.
But you know what I will address that you can talk to Michelle. During the lockdowns, Australia probably suffered the worst. The citizens of Australia, it was very oppressive. And I feel like that's an example whereby people would think twice now before they just blindly accept government decrees on things. We're in that, and I'll use that as the analogy. We're in that type of a scenario, or starting to be, with social media, people stealing content. AI automation makes it so easy to just monetize around the folks that are the business model for these places. I think there'll be pushback.
I hope so.
I'm going to take
it's not a matter of being lazy.
I'm taking us to story number 3, which is going to have a personal connection for the three of us in a moment. So Substack podcast going pro. This comes to us ironically from Substack. Until now, podcasts have overwhelmingly relied on advertising revenue as their business model. But that's changing over at Substack. Right now, direct paid subscriptions to the podcasters are surging. Substack podcasters are now collectively earning more than $100 million in annual revenue, and that number has more than doubled in the past year. So there is a new way to make money from your podcast. There's a lot of implications here for Spotify, for the podcasters, for the creator economy. Thoughts around this one? I guess we'll start with you, Mike. What do you think about the concept of Substack's podcasts? You could just pay and support these folks, and it's working, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is anything new. Substack's whole business model has really been around people paying for exclusive content. And I think that if you mix podcasting into that, there's specific applications that you can do where you give away content. Let's say we did a half an hour show on this, and then we said, okay, we're going to bump over to this new platform for an additional 30 minutes of exclusive content that's only available to people who are subscribed or members of the Business on the Block podcast. This is an extensive business model, but I want to take this one step further. And, we're starting to move away from the blockchain component of this discussion, but I want to kind of bring it back. When we were in Phoenix, where we all met at the Creator Economy Expo, there was a guy there by the name of Mikey Pirro, shout out Mikey. And he was involved in a project called 2 Cents. And 2 Cents is a platform that actually pays listeners in order to engage with content. And what they can do is that they can actually comment on specific podcasts at specific points, and those comments are sent to the creators. Now, not every podcast is live like we are. Hello. But ultimately, those creators get those comments, and then they can engage with the users based around a particular timestamp. And as somebody who listens to podcasts all the time, I can arguably say that you feel like you're a part of the discussion. So at timestamp 2 minutes and 14 seconds, and they said something ridiculous that you feel you have a rebuttal for, now you can engage with that particular content and actually get paid for it. So that's potentially a step further from what we're seeing here as far as, these pro concepts and these membership portals. This is more direct user engagement, and there's also incentivized content that's created on the back end.
Michelle, what do you think about this new evolution of the podcast business model?
I think that there has been, there are apps and things out there that you actually have to pay a lot of money for to syndicate your podcast to various places. One of the reasons why I think that the Substack pod stuff has been growing is because you can send your podcast to Spotify, to Apple, YouTube, various other platforms, all for free. And so I imagine that there are people who have gone, I might try a podcast, but haven't wanted to actually pay for the distribution of that. So from that point of view, it's pretty good. There's a large number of people that write on Substack now. And for those that are reasonably successful or are looking to expanding and are thinking, oh, maybe I might do a podcast, you can do it as a show under your profile on Substack, which means that your current followers, your audience members already get notified that you've got a new podcast episode up, all of that stuff. So distribution and coordination is very neat and tidy. And at the moment, there's a lot of chaos and stuff going on out there in the world. And I think that that's something that people feel is an easy thing for them to do, and it's kind of all in the same place. As to whether or not longer term, Substack is going to be the podcast network and, bump off Spotify or Apple or wherever else, different story. I have a couple of thoughts on this.
3 points I'll make. Number one, this ties directly to the ownership conversation of the content we were just talking about. Back in Conspiracy Corner, this makes it easier to clearly define that this is your content, right? When they're paying you, that you can't take that to court. Second thing is this is going to put a death knell in Spotify's coffin if they don't figure something out, because they occasionally make money and they occasionally don't. As big as they are, Spotify will need to evolve their business model. But most importantly, 2 words for everybody: cable television. This is going to work, what Substack is doing, because it worked in the 80s when HBO and all these other cable companies, and I'm old enough to remember this, came along. People were willing to pay because they wanted to support the content. It's just like public television, and not have commercials. And so suddenly you were able to do that. What will eventually happen, and this will take years, Substack will be successful with this. They will have a couple of big hits. They'll find their new Joe Rogan, and then eventually they're going to roll in the commercials, as they always do. So you'll pay, there'll be commercials, it'll be all the same stuff. But wait,
you can pay more premium to avoid the commercials.
Right.
You can pay the fast line at Disney World to ride on the same damn ride.
Right. This is YouTube Red or whatever the heck they call it. Right. 100%. But I do think this will be successful for those who don't know or maybe would care behind the scenes. Business on the Block as a podcast. We've done 76 episodes. We've been doing this a long time, and we're going to give it a try over at Substack. Michelle's been spearheading that for us. This is an interesting dynamic because business models that change create winners and losers. And for anyone that's doing podcasting or thinking about it, this might be something worthwhile. I'm not pitching. We're not affiliated. I just like the fact that movement creates opportunity in anything always.
So I have a question for the both of you, particularly, I guess, Michelle, more on the marketing side of things, but Mark, you're very well versed in that as well. Is there more value in being on a platform with a particular follower base, or is there more value in somebody sharing your content with their followers?
You're getting at discoverability versus ownership is my view of it. I think you want a little of each.
Substack offers both, though. Substack offers both, probably better at the moment than anywhere else. So if people recommend you, follow you, that's how you grow your follower count. And it, like when you click on, if I want to follow Your Ops Guy newsletter on Substack, it says to me, Your Ops Guy recommends this, and this. Do you want to follow them? And it's automatically set to yes. And you just have to say not right now or yes, then automatically you're following those 3 publications or podcasts or whatever that you've recommended. So the way they do that is a good thing in terms of growing your subscriber base. However, as to whether or not those people are your ideal audience or your ideal customer, that's a different story. If you're looking for eyes on the prize, eyes on paper, eyes on your podcast, then it's a good model from that point of view.
Okay, so let's tie it in to the first story that we discussed. Is it fair to say that these content creators who post on these particular platforms should also demand the authenticity of their followers?
What do you mean?
Yes.
You think that demand the authenticity of their followers? I don't understand.
As in, if there's bots and stuff on Spotify, on Substack, is that what you mean, Mark?
You just gave an example of if I follow, and I don't have a Substack, by the way, so all the hundreds of thousands of listeners we have, don't go searching for my name. The recommendations at the bottom, if it's automatically set to yes, and you ultimately create the subscriber list, and you think you're off to the races, and then you pull the plug, you flip the switch on going pro, and you realize that you only have 2 people that decide to pay for your content. Well, how much time, energy, and investment has been pumped into you creating that business model predicated off false information? Because again, this is the age-old discussion with anything, for example, with Facebook advertising. I had a huge debate with somebody who was in the marketing and an agency firm that was trying to sell me on the concept of they'll get me a lot of likes on my posts. And my response to that was, okay, that's fantastic, but how do I pay my bills with likes? That little thumbs up is not accepted as currency anywhere that I know of.
I want to pick at that, Mike.
So let me just reiterate the point that I made at the beginning of this diatribe. Is it fair for content creators to authenticate their follower base, especially if there's a pro model behind it?
You have a right to know if they're real people. Yes.
So that same concept has blockchain as a solution for that.
Well, this is getting at the whole thing of bots on Twitter. You remember there's the same conversation. As someone who considers themselves a digital business consultant, this is the strategy piece. You, whoever you are, creator economy, if you're a corporate B2B that you're doing a podcast, if you're doing podcasts, you need to decide what this new business model change, how will you apply Substack strategically? Is it for discoverability, where you use the free aspect and it gets promotion? Because as you guys know, if you're on Substack, they always have this recommendation. If you like this newsletter, you'd love these. And that's your discoverability. Or this is my monetization tool. Like I don't care if I'm discovered or not. The folks who know me love me. I'm a major name in my space already. I'm going to capture money with this. They'll both work. But to your point, Mike, you do need to be able to vet how, what's legit out there. And that's not just Substack. That is every social platform. That's not going away as a problem anytime soon. Blockchain's the answer.
So we come back to the conversation of data. Right? Like if you're providing this content and the users are generating engagement with that content, that is a data pool that is now collected by these companies. And they're repurposed in the form of your ops guy recommends that you do this, 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 and this because the content is similar. Do I actually recommend it? I mean, am I able to, say, hey, I give my stamp of approval on this? And again, I'll ask the question, and Michelle, I really want you to dive a little bit into this answer because we have a little bit of time here. Is it more valuable for something like Spotify or Substack to recommend something versus your actual targeted audience going out and sharing that concept with their followers? Which holds more weight?
Yeah, I think on Substack, both happen. And the recommendations that you're talking about are my recommendations or your recommendations. It says, would you like to recommend other publications on Substack when people subscribe to your content? So it is very curated by you. So if you don't, it's not them. They don't put the 5 most popular or whatever. It is that part of it is curated by you. I think the other thing to understand is that there are 1% of Substack people who make money. One of the top newsletters, the guy earns $60,000 a year from paid subscribers, not a huge amount of money. I think where the money comes in, if you think longer term on Substack, and after being on for a year, with my newsletter, I've got 2 now. I think it would come from sponsorships and advertising within your newsletter is where you need to look at how you can monetize something like a Substack. So not necessarily from upgrading your, like I read a story the other day and the person has like 110,000 followers or 100,000 followers on Substack, and they've got like 1,000 people in their paid. So that's not a good percentage in terms of conversion. However, having 100,000 people read your newsletter every week is a number you can go to sponsors with or advertisers with and say, hey, I've got a 57%, like my open rate on my newsletters has always been above 50%. You can go, 50,000 people are going to open this email every week. It costs you, $1,000 a week to advertise in it or whatever.
So this is becoming a B2B discussion instead of a B2C discussion, right? And you're manipulating the information and the data in an effort to get support, financial support in what you're trying to build, whether they're real or not. Yeah, it really is. It really is. But
I want to also mention YouTube. This is going to be impacted by this. YouTube is challenging.
Google's entire model is around that. The only difference is that you don't give the stamp of approval on the recommended content. They do. That's the primary difference between those two models. And again, even that is subjected to, some sort of a, conspiracy corner, again, some sort of a manipulation, right? If I own a franchise McDonald's, I am not recommending Burger King, even though they offer the same product, because you're taking customers away. I don't want people to be distracted with whatever time they're allocated to read Substacks to someone else.
I think that if there's bias in these platforms' recommendations, if you're getting at that, Mike, that's a whole episode. Before we lose time, I do want to touch on the something that's coming up on Friday for those who are aware. Any final comments on these stories real fast, Mike, Michelle?
I mean, I don't think that it's the end of this. We'll hear more. I mean, I think the thing that what you were saying before about what YouTube now has to worry about is that Substack now do video stuff. They have also just rolled out in their notes section, which used to just be typing a note, like a Post-it note kind of thing. You can now do live videos to that. So, they're picking the best bits of the platforms that people like and trying, not saying that they are, but trying to stay away from the bits that people don't like. So there's no ads, there's no,
The one thing I want to add to that, though, is every platform copies every other platform's features. We know that. But that doesn't take into account the platform's culture. Platforms have different cultures. So does Substack's culture lend itself to podcasting? I kind of think it does. YouTube has, frankly, struggled a bit with that, although they have the better discoverability, so that's carried it. Spotify, I don't know where that ends up, but this is the concept is that podcasting in general, this is going to shake the world up. All right. For those who don't know, on Friday, something's happening in the world of Bitcoin. We are not a crypto show. And I will stress that because I come from finance in my background in the old days, and I attract those folks and hate them. So I will say this, though. The Bitcoin halving, how do we say this, Michelle?
Halving.
The Bitcoin halving is happening on Friday. It's projected for April 19th, U.S. Eastern time in the evening. This is basically the reduction in supply, increasing Bitcoin scarcity. For those who, this is going to make the news. It'll be a big deal. For those who aren't following the story, it's about to heat up. If you're going to hear all about crypto next week, we'll get thoughts on this one. Mike, what do you think? Good news, bad news? What should we do?
I mean, it's all part of that same strat. I thought it was today, actually. I was told it was the 17th, and I guess
no one knows exactly because it's parsing blocks, right? It's got to do with processing.
So, I mean, I think it's just the continued evolution of where this goes. It's a supply and demand type of game that Bitcoin has, and it's been, successfully executing it for years now. And this is just the next stage in evolution in it. Where does this end up with AI in the mix now, however? How easy would it be to train an AI algorithm to start, mining some of these elements and, making the less,
won't
how
matter.
can I say this? Well, it won't matter, but it will matter because it's all a matter of time efficiency. So if these AI bots or AI systems can be trained to properly mine these things and therefore do it at scale, this part of this halving is not necessarily about the supply, but about the commission that the miners get from, harvesting some of these Bitcoins within the regular transactions. So if the incentive is no longer there for miners to make money, and the incentive instead is to automate the system with using some sort of an AI technology, what does that do in the overall supply and demand? I guess that's,
but if you play that out, Mike, I agree. AI can definitely do all this stuff and will be used to because it's money. But in the end of the day, all AI really does is speed up the end release of all Bitcoins into the marketplace. It doesn't change the fact that you can't have more than 21 million.
I don't disagree with you. But again, the incentive of, somebody sitting there and actually having to mine out the Bitcoin, as automated as that system currently is, it can potentially get bigger. So the point I guess I'm trying to make, and I guess I'm living in conspiracy corner today. I'm excited for the Bitcoin halving. I think it's obviously a next stage in the evolution of it. But I also fear that when this whole system was derived, AI was not really factored into the equation.
That's true of every industry, though. I wouldn't worry about it. It's mathematically limited in supply, and that was the point, and that won't change. Michelle, thoughts on this? Good, bad?
When is Mike's app being released? That's what I want to know. That's the first thing.
Waffles?
Secondly, Mike, can you scroll down to the chart? The only Bitcoin chart you'll ever need, in fact, is what it says. Right. So looking at this chart, in the history, I've done share trading over 20 years ago for a few years, been looking at these sorts of things. One thing I know for sure is that when a company is consolidating their shares, if you've got two today and next week you're only going to have one, the price of that one, which say it was $20 and it will now be worth $10 because there's only half the amount, within usually less than 6 months, that price of that one share you have when you used to have two goes back to $20. So the prices always go up after these sorts of things. While that's not exactly what's happening with Bitcoin, if you look at this chart, you will understand that the price always increases after a halving event.
I'm going to go further and say there's something that guarantees that Bitcoin goes up in value. And it's not really even in value. The value doesn't change. It goes up in price because of the U.S. government printing. We're in the middle of the largest money printing experiment in the history of humanity, and this thing has a fixed supply. And I don't want to sound too much like Michael Saylor, but the reality is, and I spent a long time looking at these charts on Wall Street, the reality is supply and demand. People want sound money. The inflation you see out there is not an act of God. It's not like the weather. It just happens. It comes from printing money. And when people start to understand that Bitcoin doesn't lose value, they're going to buy it. So that'll take a while to play out also, but that's my view. But
it also has to enter itself into the economies too, right? It also has to be a particular medium of exchange in order to have that sort of intrinsic value of demand.
Speaking of the economies, last story I'll throw at you guys, something off
Oh,
Cointelegraph.
wait, can I just say one more
please,
thing?
Michelle. Mhm.
The other comment I was going to make that was, what kind of a party in the year 2140 will there be when the last Bitcoin block is mined? We will not be there. However, maybe our great grandchildren. I don't know how many
I think
greats
they're
we've
great.
got to.
So this is, for those who aren't aware, on the national stage, as countries line up, the United States government is the biggest cryptocurrency holding nation right now. Second is the United Kingdom, and third is Germany. The U.S. government holds 212,000 Bitcoin, and that's roughly $15 billion US. The UK holds about 61,000 Bitcoins, which is $4 billion, and Germany 49,000 Bitcoin, roughly $3.5 billion. So basically, this might be a conspiracy corner for you, Mike. The U.S. government is stockpiling Bitcoin, whether it's through, seizure or not. They have them, and they're also printing away their reserve currency at the moment. Be interesting to see how this plays out.
So I'll tell a funny story. I got a buddy of mine who's Jewish that did a little pilgrimage to the Middle East with his mom a couple of years ago. And he goes to the site where Jesus was baptized, and he looks at his girlfriend and he's like, just in case. And he jumped in. So interesting that, all these regulators and people who are against Bitcoin and everything that's revolving around crypto, and they see it as a threat. Sounds to me like they're hedging their bet.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So with that, I'm going to
absolutely
quick recap of final thoughts. Story number one was AI colliding with blockchain. Basically, Galaxy Digital, Mike Novogratz, and Alex Ohanian saying that AI-generated images need blockchain to prove their viability or their authenticity. In the conspiracy corner,
articles.
In the conspiracy corner, we talked about how you can rent your data on a Reddit to get paid for it, but meanwhile, Reddit is opposing that. And finally, Substack is paying people who want a podcast. You can pay their podcasters directly. So, final thoughts on whatever we see trend-wise. Mike, Michelle. We'll start with you, Michelle.
I think that the Substack podcast thing is going to have legs for a bit of time, for a while. Business on the Bloc's about to start doing sending their podcast to Substack, which will easily allow us then to send it also to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you can't see the show live and you're wanting to catch up later, you will be able to listen in the car or, out walking, all of that stuff.
For context, by Business on the Block moving the podcast onto Substack, that is the equivalent of a bulldozer moving into a child's Lego playset. Just letting you know. Mike, what do you think?
I think the lesson of all this is pretty basic. I mean, we have all these shiny objects in our Ferrari, and the engine that we keep referring to as the solution is blockchain. And it doesn't necessarily need to mean, NFTs or even crypto. We're talking about the evolution of business and the revolution of where business moves, and how blockchain is an essential piece of where all that moves and evolves to. Even if it's behind the curtain, under the hood of the car, whatever analogy you want to make, a lot of these pieces will be working behind the scenes.
We've often said that blockchain is the solution, and Web3 becomes the thing when people don't realize it's Web3. That's really blockchain. Yeah. I think we're going to see that with the pushback for personal data control when it comes to social media. People don't understand blockchain, and that doesn't matter. But the fact that they can get paid, well, that they understand. And if blockchain is the only way to do that, I think that, to your point, Mike, this program is running a long time now, the Weekly Insight into the Digital Business Revolution. Blockchain provides a lot of solutions from marketing, community building, protecting of your data, and people don't need to understand this. This isn't to argue them into it. It's more to say, you're going to make money with this thing, and companies understand that. And I really think that we're going to see more and more people start to turn to, well, what should we be doing? Blockchain it might not be called that. There'll be apps and there'll be solutions and they'll have terms for it, but it's going to be a blockchain behind the scenes thing that enables people to make more money. Hence this discussion. For those who don't know, we run this program because we feel there's not an up-level business discussion around blockchain, the evolution of AI. The digitization of business is a real thing, from the creator economy to B2B now, discovering that content actually matters. So I think that this is something that I can tell you from my engagements on LinkedIn recently, especially, a lot more interest in what is the blockchain business angle. Whereas, what, a year or two ago, nobody cared what we were talking about. We're here every Wednesday. Please.
Just a quick shout out to the great chat in Bolt today. If you are wanting to chat live with us during the episode, then get yourself a boltplus.tv account and you can chat live with us during the show.
I want to thank everyone for their support. We're here every Wednesday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. Shout out to the Bolt Nation. We're on YouTube, Business on the Block. We'll soon be on Substack. For those who have any questions, comments, please drop them. We will respond. We do engage. We really appreciate the support. The reason we do this live and not pre-recorded like everyone else does is because we believe that this is a differentiator in an AI world. The authenticity thing, stumbling for your words, making fun of each other. I think that this becomes more important as AI becomes more polished. And for anyone listening, give some thought to things like your personality and expressing that through lives.
It also allows you to be a part of the show. A lot of these comments that are pumped out here are tangential pieces of the topics we discuss. And we've elaborated several times on, comments, whether it's Spanner, Jake the Snake, Blue Skies, whomever, your engagement in the show helps fuel it as well. So we definitely want to keep that live element because it definitely has value that separates this type of show from something else where you feel like you're being talked to as opposed to being talked with.
Amen. All right, everybody. Thanks for everyone. Michelle, Mike, appreciate your comments as always. Final thoughts, goodbyes.
No, bye.
Peace out, everybody. We'll see you next week.